You're listening to Heroes in the Moment.
What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
Today, Moon Knight Episode 3.
Episode 3.
So, spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the episode, go watch it.
Watch it. Just
Why
drop.
are you here? But
Facts.
save it, download it, and then come back.
And then, I see what you
We
did
would
there.
appreciate that very much. So, right off the gate, Nathan, initial reactions of Episode 3.
First of all, wow. It was completely different than the first
It
two
had a very
episodes.
different vibe, yes.
The amount of Egyptian content that we got was crazy. I will say, I know one of the main complaints about the show is the amount of CGI, how
Right.
bad it is. I mean, I don't know. I think it's decent for what it is, but
Right.
the amount of gods and
Mhm.
pyramids,
Well-
and I thought it was pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather them spend money on more or other resources as the CGI if it's, has a good plot. Because I can live with, not perfect CGI when it comes to having a really great plot.
Yeah,
So
I
when it
agree.
has a good plot, I'm cool with it. But like you said, it has a completely different vibe. This episode was good. I still think I like the vibe of episode 1 and 2 a little bit better, personally. I think episode 3 was good. It just had so much to try and fit into one episode. It felt like a little bit overwhelming at times.
Really.
I feel I feel like at certain parts I was like a little bit confused. I was like, okay, not in the confused in a good way, in the sense of they're trying to lead up to something, confused
Yeah.
in a way that I didn't exactly know what was going on. And I didn't really like that in certain scenes and stuff. But overall, the episode was good. But I feel like, the complete change of it's a completely different show. It felt
Yeah.
like in this episode, it felt completely opposite to the first two. And that drastic change kind of changed my opinion of it a little bit.
Got
I
you.
still think it's a great episode. Don't get me wrong at all. I think it was a very good episode. My favorite part was kind of when the whole Moon Knight fight was fantastic.
It's
My favorite
crazy,
part,
bro.
so great. But yeah, just a different vibe was cool, and I love the Egyptian vibes of it. It's just the whole completely different change of it was a little bit overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
To say that.
And I would argue too that I think episode 2 almost had more at least new things and information, right? Because that was episode 2.
Mhm.
It was just Harrow hitting Moon Knight just with facts and facts and facts and
Right.
facts and facts and facts. But it takes place in kind of one central location.
Right.
Whereas this episode, you kind of getting hit with the same amount of facts, but it's a completely new area.
Right.
Which I appreciate. A lot of the Disney Plus shows have, they gotten kind of started like Hawkeye and then Falcon Winter Soldier, which is, kind of one spot.
Exactly.
Same feel. And this was completely different. So I appreciate them for doing
Right.
that.
And one thing I do appreciate is so far, this has been probably the most consistent Marvel show so far.
I'd agree.
Out of the first 3 episodes were incredible so far. The first 3 were always very good. The first 3 episodes of WandaVision were just the sitcom, so you can't really judge that comparatively to this. But Falcon Winter Soldier, I didn't like I liked the first episode was good, then it kind of went downhill a little bit, and then it kind of rose up in the end. And then, Loki had a great first 2 episodes. The third episode was terrible. Then Hawkeye had, pretty good 3 episodes, but they weren't perfect, as, they were kind of slow.
Yeah.
And then third episode picked up with action. And then you have, to also compare, that's all the Marvel ones, but also to Star Wars, Boba Fett had the terrible 3rd episode. So, same company, so I'll say it in comparison. But, with this so far, it's going really, really
Listen,
well.
It's holding its ground.
It is.
And I think at the current trajectory, it could be better than WandaVision.
I think it could be. I really do think it could be. It has to, keep this momentum going, because, it also has the potential to episode 4 could be not good. So we'll see what happens with that.
True.
I just really hope that, at this point, I'm trying to find a way that they could input a backstory on how Mark Spector became Moon Knight.
Yeah.
And I'm not sensing where they could put it at this point.
If anything, I thought they would throw it into this episode.
Right.
Because this episode was entirely about Mark Spector, and it took place in Egypt.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't they show his backstory?
Which the next episode will take place in Egypt too. So I'm wondering if they'll do a little bit of backstory now and maybe go back and forth or something of that nature. I'm not sure exactly what they'll do. It's just, I would appreciate, this is a character that a lot of people don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
And this is a brand new character. And usually with brand new characters, you got to start with an origin. And I like the fact that they didn't, but I still want it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I still want to see it.
So do you think saving his backstory or bits and pieces of it for episode 4, you think that'd be too late in a was it 6 episodes, right?
Right. I feel like it's a little late, but at the same time, if they implement it correctly and right, and they do a good way of doing that, and so far I've got faith in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So in episode 4, if they could illustrate that pretty well, then I could see it. unless they're going to save it for like, episode 5 and have that be the build up to the finale of somehow, some way. I don't know. So we'll see what happens with that. But there's just no way they could do it in like episode 6.
I feel like if they don't, I know we said this about episode 3, but if they don't do an episode 4, I don't see where. I assume the next episode will be about Mark, trying to get back Khonshu or trying to stop Amit. One, Stephen Grant's not going to be able to do much, right? So I feel like it's going to be about Mark, right? Obviously in Egypt, so like it has to explore his backstory.
Right, it does. It does. And one thing I did appreciate about this episode I have to mention is the fact of it definitely shows the usefulness of Stephen Grant.
Yeah.
Because before we were like, okay, this is just I don't know, what's the word, innocent guy who's just kind of a chill dude like trying to live his life.
Fool.
Yeah, like pretty much. Yeah, and he just seems like just a normal, innocent dude. But then now he's bringing him in and like he's helping Mark, and he's actually doing like the Egyptian stuff, and like he's the one who figured out the puzzle with the stars, and that's awesome to really get like what Steven's what he can do, and I appreciate that.
That was definitely a really cool contrast to what we saw at the start of the show, because initially we saw Stephen Grant, and then he looked kind of dumb, and then he kind of like relied on Mark, right, for everything. And for the first time here, we saw the contrast where Mark realized like, hey, I actually need this guy,
right?
And that was cool to see that contrast.
It was really cool, and I'm glad that they did that. And I really do we got to highlight. We've been wanting to see more Mark, and this episode gave us more Mark, so I'm excited to do that. I do think I like Steven a little bit better right now than Mark Spector. I do.
I love them both.
I like them both, but Mark Spector, he's just kind of this like grunty, like
he's a mercenary. He is a mercenary. Got a job, but like props to Oscar Isaac, dude.
Yes.
Especially in that one scene, like where it's one shot where he changes.
He changes his whole face, demeanor, everything.
Bro, it's so nutty.
It's very great acting. Very, very talented acting. Like, I guess for TV shows, Emmy. He would deserve an Emmy for this show if he gets one.
Listen, I'm telling you, I told you this while we were watching it, but I think by the end of this show, this could be considered the best, like, at least MCU acting performance.
It could.
In a movie or a show that we've seen.
There's some good ones, though.
There are.
There's some good ones.
There are.
I mean, you have Robert Downey, Willem Dafoe.
We've never seen, I guess except for Willem Dafoe, someone be able to completely switch what they're doing, right? Willem Dafoe did it with, Good Guy and then Green Goblin, and now.
And that's the one thing I like is it's very similar performances. I mean, like Willem Dafoe's character's Green Goblin is very similar to Moon Knight, only, Moon Knight's a good guy. Yeah. So that's pretty cool contrast there. But yeah, like I said, like I love seeing Mark and his perspective again with this episode. And I loved, his dealings. And also, on top of that, you mentioned his relationship with Layla in this episode was really, really a highlight as well. And I've gotten to really like Layla.
Dude, I love Layla.
She's a great character, great in the show. Fits really well. I mean, in fact, she's not afraid to kill some dudes too. Like she could get it. Like she could kill some people.
Bro, listen, Layla, dude, she's a complete baller. And I really hope they keep her on. Please don't kill her off.
I don't think
she's been an awesome addition to the show, and she definitely balances out Mark Spector really well.
Right.
Because, she has a similar skill set, but she's also like more kind, compassionate.
I agree. Which this show is great, but again, I have to mention this because, it is MCU, but at the same time, it doesn't feel MCU at all. That's one thing. It's like, it's not a con. I'm not saying it's a con. I'm just saying it's just weird because it's so different because of the fact like it does not feel like it's the MCU, and I'm still having trouble figuring out where Moon Knight will fit in the future of the MCU. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know.
See, I definitely think that's a plus. Like I definitely think that's a pro. I feel like too often Marvel can rely on their stuff with the connectivity to the greater worlds. Mm-hmm. They'll bring in other heroes or mention other people to bring hype to a certain show. But like this is completely different.
Right.
Like this, like you said, it feels like a standalone project.
It does.
And that's why I think it's so good. Like it's not relying on anything but it's acting and it's amazing plot.
Right. Not relying on cameos,
like
not relying on stuff.
Obviously, in the end, it will connect some way. But like that, I think that's why it's so good.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I do like how the MCU is starting to become more like the comic books. When I say this, because there's so many stories in the comic books that go in completely different directions, but it's all one story. It's all Marvel. So I think it's pretty cool that they're doing that in kind of a way and showing so much more content, even though a lot of content can be overwhelming. So we'll see how they go in the future from now. I think Marvel's at a pretty good point right now, but I'm afraid that in like, I don't know, like maybe 3, 4, or 5 years time, it will be on a kind of a downhill slant. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll have to see with that, and maybe DC will take the opportunity to rise up. I hope
so.
I hope they do. I really do.
Up.
I really do. But we got to talk about the whole Egyptian gods aspect of this episode. So the Egyptian gods, okay, so we meet that every single one of them has avatars, which I didn't realize that before.
Yeah.
I just thought it was going to be just Khonshu and then I guess the Ahmed. But now we realize that they all have avatars and they have this like court of the gods, which is kind of cool.
That was actually one of my favorite scenes.
I think that was actually pretty awesome. The whole avatar thing, I feel like was a little bit odd, and I feel like maybe they'll go back and explain why they need avatars or something later.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do like the whole like court of Khonshu. Like, Khonshu's kind of like prosecuting Arthur Harrow for what he's done, but at the same time, the gods are, the ones going like, Khonshu, are you okay? You're not right in the mind, which I thought was pretty cool. And see the gods, and I'd like to see some more of the gods' power. I don't know what you think of that.
First of all, they were definitely kinder than what I thought.
Oh yeah, I figured they'd just be like, just kill him.
Yeah. As far as what you brought up about them using avatars, I think they mentioned that they use avatars so they can like still like somehow remain physically on Earth.
Oh, did they? I didn't catch that part.
In a sense. But as far as their power goes, we saw an amazing amount of power come out of Khonshu, which begs the question like who's like the actual god or like gods in this universe?
I know that's just I mentioned that to you while we were watching. I paused it and I was like, okay, this is confusing to me because you have Khonshu who literally pulled the moon in front of the sun, right? Which he is the moon god, it makes sense in this sense, but that's suggesting that he is the literal moon god of the world.
Of everything. Right. It affected 7 billion plus people as it showed.
Exactly. And the same thing with the stars. And he was moving the stars back in the past.
If it was just for, Egypt or that location, obviously you give that a pass. But you're talking about he has the power for like the whole world to see. Like, how powerful are these gods? But also, how do other gods fit into the equation?
You have to also think about he was moving the stars. He was moving the literal universe. Like, that would be the literal universe he was moving back in time. To the past, what it was on that day.
How?
How?
I do think that they're definitely giving him too much power and too much credit.
So that's one thing is because now we have the Egyptian gods. We have the Norse gods being Thor, Loki, Odin. But, we just know that they're not from, the actual Norway. They're just, they were gods up in Asgard. Yeah. But then we're going to be introduced into the Greek gods and to Thor, Love, and Thunder. And of course, Gore the God Butcher are going to come around and kill a bunch of them.
I hope he murks them all.
I'm sure he's going to. And we know, we're going to get that in the MCU with Hercules probably, and I'm assuming Zeus and all this stuff. And we have that. And then we have the Celestials, who are the apparent creators of the universe. And if there was a flipping giant Celestial in Earth, how the flip are there gods on Earth? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just in the MCU,
I don't see how it makes sense.
It doesn't. But that's my con with that.
But maybe part of it is attributed to that whole, how it doesn't seem connected. Maybe, when they were writing the show, they're like, I don't know. In order to feel, separate, we're going to have our own gods do their own
but that's
thing.
The only thing, unless they end up making to where Mark Spector is in a different world, possibly, and they have to bring him into the MCU for the multiverse. I don't think they'll do that. I think he's on the actual world.
I think he is,
but at the same time, it's confusing at the same time, if you know what I mean.
No, I completely agree. And I have a hard time just seeing how all the pieces of the gods just fit together.
Oh, I agree 100%.
I doubt they'll explain it. I really do. I don't think that's something that's been thoroughly thought through.
Right.
But yeah, dude, I'm not sure.
I mean, when you have a universe that gets this big, it's going to be very difficult to think around everything. So I understand where the writers are coming from and how hard it probably is to write in these gods. Yeah. But I understand. But real quick, I have to highlight just the Moon Knight scene, dude. That scene was awesome. The fight when he turned to Moon Knight, it was, like we said, it was darker, a lot darker than we've ever seen Marvel.
Shout out Disney, for not being afraid, for taking, risks, showing blood. Showing people getting impaled.
Yeah.
The dopest scene I thought was when Moon Knight caught the bullets in his cape and threw them. That was
so cool.
And killed them. Bro, that was crazy.
And he blocks the bullets, and apparently his suit, it said earlier, Khonshu says his healing suit. So he was getting stabbed through it. So I'm wondering if when he's in that suit, it's not his actual body per se, it's just the suit kind of molds around it or something.
Because he wasn't screaming in pain or anything when he had 3 wooden stakes through him, through his hand,
that killed
through his shoulder, through his thigh. He
had one in the middle of him too. You'd be knocked out for sure.
Yeah.
Or dead. But it was so cool. The one thing, Con, I did not like is when he transferred to Mr. Knight there. it was just kind of odd, that kind of transition
Like
to Moon Knight, because like while he was stabbed and then he just instantly turned back, like that was a little bit odd to me. But other than that, I enjoyed the fight very, very much. Like it was my favorite
thought that
part.
was one of the best parts. And I think definitely, speaking of Mr. Knight, we have to talk about the possibility of there being a third personality.
Right. Because they hint at it, right? In the what is kind of towards the beginning when Mark was chasing after those guys, and then Steven, it transferred back to Steven. When Mark got back into his body, all the people were dead, and he just stabbed him. And he was like, "Steven, did you do this?" And he's like, "No, I didn't do it." And of course, we believe
he
Steven.
couldn't, and he doesn't have the power to.
No, Steven could not do that. Martin didn't do it, so who did it? My theory is Khonshu took over for a second, but at the same time, I'm not sure.
We've not seen that though.
No. Well, we did see it when he was talking to the gods, because Khonshu took over Mark Spector's body when he was talking to the gods.
True, and he did try to punch Harrow.
Right.
That just... Why would Khonshu want to kill them? Khonshu knows full well that Mark Spector could just kill these guys.
It's a fact.
Like he's not afraid to do so.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Could there be? I mean, I think that was like one of the biggest like reveals in the entire episode, because it's played like 2 or 3 times. He's like, "You did this?" He's like, "No, I didn't do it."
Yeah.
And Mark Spector's like, "Well, who the frick did?"
Exactly.
Like, is there another like baller dude in that body?
In the comics, there are more personalities than just Stephen Grant and Mark Spector. So I would love for there to add another one to see a new perspective.
I think 3 max. We're already halfway through the show.
Exactly.
Like, how are you going to introduce another character halfway through?
We'll see what they do with it, but I don't know.
It could be Khonshu, but dude, I think
could be another.
I don't know, dude.
I don't know.
We'll
see. I guess that was pretty awesome. So we know in the next episode we're probably going to get a whole arc with. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit of a backstory, and then we'll probably get some Harrow. Quite a bit of Arthur Harrow and him going after trying to release Ahmed. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm super excited for the future. And I mean, episode 3, pretty awesome. And I'm excited. I mean, so far the show's been great. So I'm excited for the next 3.
All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by giving us a review and a download. Check out our last episode, which was Moon Knight episode 2. So if you haven't heard the first 2 episodes, go ahead. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check that mess out, and we really appreciate it.
We would really appreciate that. Also, if you are a Harry Potter person, check out our movie review for Fantastic Beasts: Secrets of Dumbledore coming Tuesday.
I hope it's good.
I hope it's good too.
It'll be better than the first 2, but that's not saying a lot.
That's not saying a lot.
No.
I don't think it'll be as good as the 7 original 8. All right. We just want to thank you all for listening, and as always, we love you 3000.